All right, guys, thank you for that. And we've got Mary O'Connell joining us for today's community segment. We are talking the history of running on ice today, and not just the show that's only about 2 years old. We're talking about true history of cold chain. Mary, something that I don't think a lot of people realize, cold chain transportation has been around for quite as long as it has.
Yeah, so that was something I figured, new year. Let's look back into history and see kind of how we got here. And something that I learned is that cold chain, and in some way, shape, or form, basically the essential part of transporting something and keeping it cold, has actually been around since the 1800s, which shocked me because as most people know, in the 1800s, there wasn't really like ice packs, or ice wasn't always like readily accessible. You still had the Iceman that came every day. So, but no, basically what it was that the fishermen would take ice and put it on these boats that were insulated with all of these now to us, very weird things. And they would put it on boats and put the fish that they caught on the ice and ship it off. And that's how that was like the very first thing on record that you could consider for the history of cold chain. So I'm sure there were probably other instances earlier on, but that's kind of what is considered the first real part of cold chain.
It's definitely intriguing to see some of the areas that we've kind of developed and gone through. What are going to be some of the key milestones? So, for example, of course, those ice boats moving fish on throughout the seas and things like that. But what are going to be some of the things that you're looking at in terms of when we get to that transformation? Now we're starting to look at land transformation and transporting of ice and refrigerated goods.
So a lot of it actually started with ships. So we had, in the 1800s, there were ships of fish and other, meat products or other things like that. That's where most of it started. And then the song that everybody knows, the Chiquita Banana song, the "Come Mr. Tallyman, Tally Me Banana." I'm not going to sing it because honestly, we don't need that this morning. But there were ships specialized to transport certain things. So there was, like, for example, a banana boat, the whole thing that we know and love today. It came from the ships that were customized with certain ventilation systems or like, I guess, rudimentary ventilation systems where they would sit there and have certain vents in places. That was also something kind of in the cold chain as they were transporting bananas from one place to another. Actually, in I think it was 1882, there was the first shipment of frozen meat to go from New Zealand to England. So that was kind of cool that meat had been frozen and went that long distance, especially in the late 1800s, because that's not exactly what we would consider the pinnacle of technology. But yeah, so it was really cool, and England kind of became a hub for this. And by the end of the century, they had the ability to hold like millions and millions of animal carcasses, which is really cool. But then, as we kind of move into the future, there was the first portable air conditioner, which is what we know as the reefer unit now, and it actually got born on a golf course. That's where the idea for it became.
So I love that because as we think about it now, of course, if you are an avid golfer, the cart girls run around and they have their little tiny miniature, basically refrigeration units on the back of their carts. And now we see them everywhere driving down the road, right? You can look at a trailer and say, yep, that's a reefer, that's not a reefer. When we look at that, that was the last kind of major, big, significant advancement that's led to modern day cold chain transport now. But we're working on some pretty cool things, no pun intended with that one, to up the efficiency and reduce the emissions when it comes to cold chain. What are some of those things coming down the pipeline that we can expect to see? I think there was a segment that you did maybe a couple months ago talking about like the pallet jackets, something like that.
Yes, there are pallet jackets. They are great. They're pallet parkas. And they're fantastic. They keep everything insulated. But really, honestly, the guy who created the portable air conditioner, Frederick Jones, he founded Thermo King, and that is, as we know, kind of the leader in portable or in reefer units that we have today. So the fact that that company has been around since the 1930s and is still considered one of the industry leaders today is fantastic. But as for new cold chain products, I mean, the sky's the limit. It seems we have things. It's a far cry from fish on ice, as we have things that can keep things at negative 50 degrees Celsius, or like basically keeping things negative cold and in a frozen, like completely frozen beyond state. I think is really exciting that we can look back at how it started of fish on ice and see something that simple, or that, transported COVID vaccines, transports food to people every day. And, we still do have the container ships that are bringing fruit from other countries to here and anywhere else, so that way people can have access to food and everything year round. So I really like that, and it's a far cry from where it's come, but it is really cool to see what started as fish on ice doing something like transporting blood for emergency situations, medical devices, food for people, and getting medical care to people in rural areas here in the U.S. as well as other countries. So it's really, really fascinating to see where it started and how we've developed to what we have today.
Definitely intriguing to see how it's continued to develop. And Mary, putting you on the spot here, what is one application or maybe something that you're hopeful for as we continue to move forward throughout 2024, or maybe in the years beyond, that you would love to see or that you're excited about within the cold chain space?
There is something that I'm really excited about, and it's less of a cold chain thing and more of a pharmaceutical thing. There are some needleless vaccines that are being piloted, and depending on the vaccine, you don't necessarily need cold chain supply, or you don't need to have it kept at a certain temperature. And basically, it just kind of looks like a Band-Aid, but you're able to give yourself a vaccine. Right now, it's being trialed with the MMR, the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine. But the thing that's really cool about it is it can get to remote areas of the world where, if it takes 2 or 3 days because the road washed out, you don't have to worry about anything spoiling. And you don't have to have a physician around to get there. Like, you can just have someone in the village do it. So I'm very excited about that prospect. I know it doesn't necessarily fall into the cold chain, but it kind of falls into the pharma, which is well in the cold chain world. And it does take some of that stress off of cold chain if it doesn't have to be temperature controlled throughout the entire process.
I love that. Health and humanitarian help always taking front and center. Mary, thank you for joining us this morning for Running on Ice. Where can people go to find that today?
Well, just keep watching Freightwaves TV right here on YouTube. Just keep watching them. Around 2 o'clock today, you're going to get the coolest episode in freight. And we're going to have a fun time telling stories from the past. And it's going to be a good time. The newsletter comes out today at 2 p.m. also.
Awesome, Mary. Thanks so much for joining us. And also, thanks for that Chiquita song reference. I have a strange urge to go watch Beetlejuice now. We'll be sure to catch up with you on Running on Ice here shortly.
Thanks, guys.
All right, we're going to go ahead and take a quick break, Anthony. I'm going to strange urge to go eat a banana now. I don't know.
We're just going to go take care of business here in this break. We'll talk to you soon.